And we look.
I just want to remind you, it's not up here. I had a real.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the time he feels more comfortable.
Are we doing the Arbor Day proclamation today?
We did that last time,
I
didn't
thought we did last time.
we? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We did everybody last time.
Yeah, okay. No, I think I see what happened there.
Looking at the wrong minutes?
I must be
the
I must
wrong,
be looking at
agenda.
I must be looking at the wrong agenda.
That'll happen.
There we go. That's it.
There he is.
I need to start saving them in different with a different name.
You know, I used to do that. I used to save the PDF, and I'd kind of work with the PDF and do all my notes on that. But they got so big and so slow.
I know it just slows down.
Yeah.
Good evening, good evening. We're glad you have joined us on a Tuesday evening. You could have been anywhere else, but you decided to join us here at the council meeting. I want to call the meeting to order for Tuesday, March 22, 2022. Again, thank you for joining us, and I want to welcome those who've joined us by live stream. If you haven't already, if you plan to speak tonight in public forum or public hearing, please make your way to my right and sign up on the appropriate sheet so we can recognize you at that time. All right? So what we want to do now is go into invocation, and I want to read a statement. The town of Apex values and celebrates diversity and inclusion. We see diversity as a strength that binds our community together. Inviting members from different faith communities to deliver an invocation at the beginning of our council meeting supports this unity. Recognizing that not everyone practices the same traditions, we welcome you to have a private moment of silence during this time. And what we want to do right now is take a moment of silence. We're all looking for peace with all the chaos going on in the world. And what we can do now is just take a breath in a moment before we jump into business. So please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you so much. We now move to the Pledge of Allegiance, will be led tonight by Councilmember Ed Gray.
Thank you. If you'll all stand and join me in reaffirming our commitment to the freedom and United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilman Gray. All right, move now to our consent agenda items, and all consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. And we do have a few changes tonight, so we're going to remove consent number 1 from the agenda. And then for consent number 9, we have 2 attachments, updated AMI information. So you should have received those attachments. And with that, those changes, I will accept the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, motion, Killersworth.
I second it.
Second, Stallings. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, passed unanimously. All right, we move now to presentations. Tonight we have from North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, NCDEQ recognition of the town's S&E program, presented tonight by Julie Coco. Please come up. Thank you for being here tonight.
Greetings, Council. My name is Julie Coco. I am the Program Manager for the Sedimentation Pollution Control Program within the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Thank you for having me tonight. I plan to bring you some good news this evening. First, let me briefly explain as to why I'm here. Our program administers and enforces the State Sedimentation Pollution Control Act. Our mission is to allow development within our state while preventing pollution by sedimentation. Our mission, we rely upon local government programs across the state, such as the town of Apex's Erosion and Sedimentation Control Program, to help us in this mission. The North Carolina Sedimentation Control Commission also recognizes the importance and the value that our local government programs participate in controlling pollution to sedimentation to the land and waters of the state. Local governments are audited by DEQ on behalf of this commission to ensure their programs are meeting the requirements under their state delegation of authority. In addition, each year, the department sponsors a workshop for these local programs, as we call them, as part of our education and outreach efforts. We provide updates to the statutory changes of the Sedimentation Pollution Control Act that may affect their program administration. We present on case studies. We hold panel discussions to answer questions and provide networking amongst those in the profession. In addition to training, the annual workshop seeks to recognize outstanding local programs. Nominations are solicited from other local programs as well as DEQ staff, and each year awards of excellence are presented to such qualifying local programs in a small program category and a large program category. I'm here to announce that the Town of Apex Erosion and Sedimentation Control Program won the Small Program Award for the 2021 award year. Now I just want to take a little bit of time to explain why the program was chosen for this distinguished award. The Town of Apex administers and enforces erosion and sediment control for land disturbing activities and has 3 staff, or now 4 staff, that oversee an average of 90 active projects covering just under 2,000 acres throughout the town. Some noteworthy aspects of this program include the requirement to phase the grading of large sites to help minimize sedimentation, the issuance of a wealth of resources at pre-construction meetings, their thorough application and plan review process, and their meticulous site inspections. The program also issues notices to developers when violations are discovered so that construction sites can come into compliance quickly. And I can tell you that that is a very important aspect of the Sedimentation Control Commission. The program's web pages are also well laid out, and we look at that for considering awards. Include a helpful plan review checklist for applicants, flow charts, a construction sequence, and standard plans and drawings, among other information that is easy to digest. Town staff are familiar with the construction stormwater requirements of the federal NPDES program and work with us to ensure land disturbance does not start until they are provided with permit coverage from the state. You may be aware that last year, the program received good marks for addressing the construction site discharge requirement under their MS4 permit. The town's erosion and sediment control program has a commensurable education and outreach program of their own, with colorful tents and banners that convey the impacts of construction and their mission to protect water quality. They also spend time giving presentations to public groups and to the local schools. Furthermore, the town's program meets with other Triangle area programs to solve problems related to erosion and sediment control, administration, and enforcement, and to work jointly with other programs to set clear and consistent expectations for the regulated community within the broader area. I can attest to that as I have attended some of those Triangle programs, and I wish other programs across the state would do the same. In conclusion, I would like to recognize these 4 staff members. They are Mr. James Mistiagno, Mr. Anthony Scott, Mr. Jimmy McClure, and Ms. Rachel Gamble in the Environmental Engineering Unit of the Water Resources Department for their exceptional administration and enforcement of the town's erosion and sediment control program. And finally, I would like to thank you, Council, for supporting their efforts. Now I'll present the award.
Before you go, I just want to take some time and allow my colleagues to weigh in on this award. This is extraordinary. I know there's so much work that goes into it, so our staff, amazing staff, thank you for what you do. And thank you for the recognition, and we understand how important this is for our community. So does anybody want to chime in and share your thoughts?
I will certainly chime in. I mean, I know that you work hard as a team to get done the things that that are so important that we also support you on. You know, I've seen you out there at Peak Fest explaining this information to people, and I just love to see the education out there on what's important to keep our town as clean as we can with the sedimentation. So.
All right. So this says best small local program. Could you define small?
It's 0 to 3 man-hours, full-time equivalent positions.
Oh, it's the size of the program.
The
Okay.
size of the program.
Is Holly Springs in that group? Just curious.
I think
I
they're,
imagine so, right? All right. So we beat Holly Springs.
if their staffing is the same as Holly Springs is a
Check,
small.
just checking. All right. This is fantastic. I mean, this is the thing where, you know, a new development comes in and we get the phone calls about the streets full of mud. You know, there's clay around here, it's covered in, you know, and this program is what reduces those calls and stops them. And I really appreciate your effort because, you know, and the citizens of the town appreciate your effort because it can be a big disturbance when that thing goes wrong. So, thank you.
That is the #1 pollutant in the state of North Carolina to our surface waters. Most people are unaware of that. That active construction and sedimentation, that is #1. More than industrial wastewater, sanitary sewage, oil spills, it is sedimentation.
By volume, yep. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Very well. And you guys, you grade it to go in the pond, right? And then the pond converts it over. Is that what happens? You see the ponds are full of mud.
Yeah,
And then
usually they're sediment basins as they collect it during active development.
Yeah.
But then once they hit up a certain percentage of CO, like 90% CO, they can start to convert them into their permanent stormwater control measure. Whether it be a pond, wet pond, dry pond,
Yeah.
other types of retention.
It's like, I get those calls and those emails too about someone saying, hey, like there was a pond here. This thing is full of mud. What are they doing? I'm like, actually, that's by design. It's going in the pond, so it's not going in the street. And it's supposed to be like that until they're done, and then it should be, you know, a regular retention pond at some point. But yeah, thanks, guys. This is fantastic. I appreciate all your effort.
Much appreciated.
And it's a great job that you guys do, and it's far underappreciated, but as Councilmember Mahaffey had mentioned, you know, you guys are doing the bigger task of making sure that when I drink my water, it's clean, and can't say enough thanks for that.
We appreciate that.
I'll just add, we very much appreciate your work, and to kind of follow up with Councilmember Mahaffey, we're not very competitive, although we are the peak of good living. So thank you. Thank you for keeping us at the peak. We appreciate it.
And if I could, you know, I think this area full of clay soil, there wasn't a good program like this, it would be a mess out there. And so I really appreciate it. I think the citizens, the #1 issue in terms of environmental things are water quality and erosion. So you guys doing a great job is so important.
Thank you. Thank you.
So with that, you can take a bow. We're going to stand up and give you a round of applause, all right?
Absolutely.
You dressed up well, by the way. I heard your conversation on the way you dressed up well. All right, we move now to setting of the regular meeting agenda, and I have not received any updates or changes in that. So, any
Motion.
updates?
Motion approved?
All right, motion approved. Second. Great. Any discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, motion passes unanimously. We move now to public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the community to come up and speak and present any type of concerns you have, recommendations. And Madam Clerk is checking now, are there any signups? We have one. All right, very well. Thank you so much. So we'll open it up now to Mr. Jeff Hastings.
I signed up on the right line for once. Thank you. Twofold here. Wearing the hat of the Apex Historical Society and the White County Historical Commission. I'd like to see if we can get an update on the Tunstall House and where it stands with the line item budget. Certainly not immediate, but, you know, certainly pressing. Second of all, more emotional. As most of you may know, February I lost my house. We're in Florida, got a phone call at 2:30 in the morning saying that my house was burning from my father. The second phone call I got was from a fireman here in Apex that I've known for 25 years. Scooter told me that my house was on fire, but he was elated to hear my voice. And I said, Scooter, my house is burning down. Why are you happy to hear my voice? And he said, we rolled up to your house, your truck, and 2 of your cars are out front. And he said, we didn't see anybody out front. And he said, we went in looking for bodies. And he said, we're elated to hear that you were in Florida. We lost our cats. We have lost our house. Everything in my house fits easily on this table right here. That being said, I come before you tonight to tell you that whatever money that we spend on fire protection is well spent. They came, they assessed the problem. Chief McGee and all of his staff figured out how to put it out. They saved my horses. We lost our cats because they were inside, but my horses, my cows, everybody else is okay. Like I say, we were in Florida, so it's a good thing that nobody was inside, because he said, based on where it started, we would not have made it out. So we're thankful for what we have, but I'm here to congratulate the town of Apex, and all the effort they put forth for public safety is dollars well spent for the Hastings family and Friendship. So, I mean, it's emotional still, but thank you all very much. Appreciate what the town does, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before you leave, we just want to say how much we appreciate you and your family, and you're in our prayers.
Well, and we thank you. And the outpouring from the community has been incredible, and I'll be coming back before you probably sometime in June with a way to pay it forward in October. October is Fire Prevention Safety Month. And we're going to figure out a way to take some of the dollars that we've gotten, and we're going to pay it forward, because if we can save one animal or one life or one house, then it makes it a little more worthwhile, and it makes us sleep a little bit easier at night. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for taking the time to come.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, move now to public hearings. We'll start with public hearing number 1. And it will be public hearing and possible motion to approve rezoning application 21CZ 32, presented tonight by Amanda Bunce.
Yes. All right, good evening, everyone. This is rezoning 21CZ 32, which is located at the east corner of Chapel Ridge Road and Olive Chapel Road. It's a 21.5 acre assemblage of land, which includes 5 parcels and the Barnside Lane right-of-way. As you can see, there are multiple houses on the individual lots, and a few trees. The current zoning is rural residential, and that's predominantly the surrounding zoning to the north and the east, some to the west. You also have office and institution conditional zoning across Chapel Ridge Road at Olive Chapel Professional Park, and across Olive Chapel Road is medium density residential subdivisions. The proposed zoning is plan unit development conditional zoning, and the 2045 land use map categorizes this area as medium density residential, and the proposed rezoning is consistent with that land use classification. The applicant conducted their neighborhood meeting on November 17th, and you have that report. We did request a letter of impact from Wake County Public Schools, and I'll say what they said. The school system indicates that elementary and high schools within the current assignment area have insufficient capacity, but construction within the next 5 years may address concerns at those levels. It's a little bit of a moot point because now the project is age restricted, and so the demand on school systems is, much less. So the proposed uses are single-family accessory dwelling unit and townhomes. The maximum density proposed is 4.7 dwelling units an acre, or a maximum of 100 dwellings. A maximum building height of 35 feet or 2 stories is proposed. And the applicant has proposed the typical architectural conditions that we see. Let me come back to here. For perimeter buffers, for the most part, the buffers are as prescribed by the UDO. No reductions have been proposed. There is an increase in over what the UDO requires along Chapel Ridge Road. There's currently no buffer required, but they are proposing a 20-foot type B buffer with a fence along that property line, and that resulted out of meeting in part with the neighbors in the area. And then along the northern property boundary, they are proposing to increase the opacity from a type B to a type A buffer. The applicant has also proposed a zoning condition that at least 2 median income affordable housing townhome units shall be constructed on site and sold to homeowners making no more than 100% of the area median income. And there's a much longer condition laying all of that out, but they have proposed 2 affordable housing units. As I said, it is an age-restricted, proposed to be an age-restricted development. The development will meet the UDO requirement of 20% RCA. And since this development is within the primary watershed in the Beaver Creek, Upper Beaver Creek Basin, they will be required to attenuate the 1-year, 10-year, and 25-year storms. The development has also, will be providing frontage improvements on Olive Chapel Road, widening for a 6-foot bike lane, constructing curb and gutter along with 5-foot sidewalk and along with right-of-way dedication, and along Chapel Ridge Road, sidewalks and right-of-way dedication as well as sidewalk on both sides of all internal streets. The applicant has addressed all of the Environmental Advisory Board's suggested zoning conditions. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission met in February and unanimously recommended a fee in lieu for the project. The Planning Board heard this at their March 14th meeting and unanimously recommended approval with the conditions offered by the applicant. And planning staff recommends approval as well. The 2045 land use map designates the site as medium-density residential, and the proposed rezoning is consistent with that classification. And approval of the rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because the site provides increased perimeter buffers, higher planting standards, a crosswalk on Chapel Ridge from the site to the future transit stop, and sidewalk infrastructure along Olive Chapel and Chapel Ridge roads. In addition, the project proposes to provide 2 units that will be affordable to median income households earning up to 100% AMI. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Any questions for Ms. Bunce?
Ms. Bunch, just for the record, could you share, just for the public who might be interested in the actual salaries or incomes that we're talking about for the AMI? Do you have that information?
I do not have that in front of me.
Okay, we do. Council does, but just for the record, I'd like our residents to know, and staff completed this for us, that for one person, in terms of incomes, what we're talking about, for one person, it's about $67,000 income. 2 people, it's $76,500. 3 people in the household, it's $86,000. 4 people, $95,000. And 5 people, $103,000, just so people can kind of understand what kind of incomes we're talking about for that. And that's up to that amount of income, as I understand it. Thank you.
I had a couple questions, I guess 3. One was, when staff was making the recommendation for approval, I know this neighborhood has kind of a long history with the town, and how much consideration was thought about the cohesiveness of the neighborhood and whether it would be advisable for the town to kind of try to wait maybe until the entire neighborhood is kind of ready to do this redevelopment?
This is Diane Kim, Planning Director. I was here at that time, and I'll just tell you that we did not recommend approval of the first development at the Chapel Ridge neighborhood. And we told the council at the time that we felt it was dominoes, and it's the first domino that you're gonna put over. Once that domino fell, the dominoes are gonna continue to fall. We fully support the change because the decision was made to change the neighborhood at that time. And so we'll continue to see changes throughout this neighborhood over time.
The first one being the professional part.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And 2 smaller ones. I forgot to look up is the play lawn adjustment made in this one? So it's going to be the walking path or something else? Because we had a senior type development that came back to us to change the play lawn requirement to something more for seniors to use. And has that been adjusted here?
That has not been adjusted in the text for this PUD, and staff has not been able to work on a UDO amendment to address that to be by right in the ordinance.
And staff doesn't have authority to be flexible on that site plan. It needs to be, there are definitions for play lawn in the UDO?
There is a definition with standards, yes.
Okay. And the last one maybe is possibly to Russell. I noted when I was looking at the maps that the sidewalk on Olive Chapel on the north side does not connect to the public shopping center, or the other way, I guess, too, but especially that way, which is unfortunate, in my opinion. But was there consideration of thinking about a crosswalk across Olive Chapel that would be, high visibility and safer? I know it's kind of a fast road, so maybe it's not advisable, but can you speak to that?
We did not recommend it as a zoning condition. We typically study these type of locations based on actual data and make that kind of a recommendation. However, this could be a good opportunity to include it in the zoning if the applicant is interested in that. If it is a condition, I would say it'd be subject to Apex and NCDOT approval. It would be probably somewhere around the midpoint between Ashley Downs and Chapel Ridge Road. It would need to include rapid flash beacons, median refuge, all the things that are associated with a 45-mile-per-hour major thoroughfare.
And that'd be the location, if this ever happened, if this was a condition, that'd be the location rather than at one of the intersections, right? Because
Correct.
of the safety of crossing there?
NCDOT typically does not recommend crosswalks at intersections because you have a number of issues. For one, pedestrians have to compete with turning movements. Unless it's a full traffic signal that's typically warranted based on traffic volumes, pedestrians aren't as protected from those turning movements. The other thing is when you have multiple lanes, turn lanes for instance, you can have line of sight blockages. We've used advanced yield lines like at Ambergate Station on Peakway to help mitigate that, but typically for a situation like this, they're not going to allow it at the intersection. So that's what we recommend, somewhere mid-block.
Okay.
And I did talk to the long-range planning manager prior to this meeting to figure out if this was a, if aside from the volume, the actual pedestrian volumes that might be out there today, would this be a good candidate? And two things. One is the sidewalk, the fact that you brought up, doesn't continue along the north side across the bridge to the shopping center, so that makes it a good candidate for a crosswalk in this area. Yeah. The other reason would be transit service along the north side of the road.
Thinking. Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
All right.
Any other questions for Ms. Bunce? Hearing none, does the applicant wish to? Madam Clerk, if you could set the timer for us, 9 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron with Morningstar. Pleased to be here tonight on behalf of Toll Brothers, who's the proposed developer of the site. The vast majority of you will recognize this case from a case that was before you last fall that was not approved by the council, and I want to talk a little bit about changes that have been made since that decision. But for Councilman Gray's benefit, I appreciate Amanda's comprehensive presentation of the case as well as the staff report. Just some highlights associated with the case in general, and then I'll talk about the changes that have been made. It is a case that is consistent with the town's land use plan. It falls within the kind of that medium density residential classification that the town ultimately adopted for this site. I know that there had been a lot of discussion during the updates to the 2045 plan when it came through, and ultimately the town said medium density is the appropriate classification here, and we continue to be consistent with that from a land use planning standpoint. We have a unanimous recommendation from the planning board. We have planning staff recommendation. A couple of things that were negotiated as part of the last zoning that I want to highlight on. Amanda touched on the landscaping along Olive or Chapel Ridge Road, excuse me. That's has been an issue, and I say it's been an issue. It has been a concern for the folks who live along Chapel Ridge for quite some time. The manner in which the business park has developed has been a little piecemeal in terms of how the streetscape's been treated. And so they've had concerns really from the get-go on this rezoning in making sure that as this community developed, they wouldn't experience the same thing. That, if they'd already been burned one time with respect to construction equipment and there not being a complete streetscape, just making sure that that happened. And so we worked with them closely during the last rezoning case to come up with a set of conditions that gives them comfort in knowing what they're going to be looking at, and that we carried that forward as part of this case as well. We also worked closely with the folks to our north. There is a pond that this site occupies a portion of, and it's not part of the zoning case because it can't be a part of the zoning case, but we have an agreement with those folks whereby the pond will essentially be deeded from this property to those adjacent owners. They'd expressed some concerns associated with the possibility of liability, which is a very astute concern to have with respect to an attractive nuisance like a pond would be. It's a little less of a concern with a 55-plus community because you don't have a whole bunch of children running around, but still something that we agreed to as part of the prior case and something that was carried forward to this case. In terms of changes that have been made since the last time, the first, as you heard about, is it's now a 55 and older community. That serves a couple of purposes. First, the neighbors had continued to express concerns and reservations associated with trip generation. With respect to any development on the site, the 55 and older community generates less traffic, especially during the peak hour trips. I'm not a traffic engineer. We have somebody here who can answer those questions if you've got them. But the traffic information certainly reveals that the 55 and older community is going to generate far less traffic during the AM and PM peak hours as compared to what we were proposing last time. It also addresses the school capacity concerns that were raised at that time. I know a lot of that conversation has evolved since the last time we were here, and maybe the discussion would have been different at that time, but Toll Brothers is committed to the site. They're working on another 55 and older community in Apex. It's actually the retreat that you referenced, Mr. Gant, and I'll talk a little bit about your question associated with the play lawn before I conclude. But the 55 and older community, we believe, certainly resolves any concerns associated with school impacts and overcrowding. The second change that was made by going to a senior product, all of the footprint of each of the townhomes got wider. And we all have, every single unit will have a master down, and they are now 2-story rather than 3-story. That addresses a concern that we had heard from the neighborhood, again, from the beginning of the last zoning case, was they had concerns with respect to having 3-story townhomes at the front of their community. So we've reduced those from 45 feet to 35 feet with a 2-story product, master down in every single unit. Again, as a 55 and older community, that just makes sense. And then the third change, with the passage of time, things change, and one of them is the affordable housing discussion. We had a lengthy affordable housing discussion associated with this case last time and had arrived at a set of conditions that candidly was incomplete in terms of how to address on-site affordable housing. The benefit of the passage of time is that CJ is now representing the town well in this discussion. The condition that's before you tonight is very similar to the one that you saw a couple weeks ago with respect to another case that I had the benefit of working on. And so Toll Brothers was happy to be able to incorporate that into the plan for the site and to deliver on-site housing affordability for folks making 100% AMI. And so that is essentially the case as it currently stands. I don't have a whole lot more to share. I'm happy to answer questions about the case to the extent that you have them. We're hopeful that rather than the 3-2 vote against the case that we received last time around, that with these changes, especially as it relates to school impacts, knowing that there won't be any impacts or the impacts associated with this community would be negligible, as well as the affordable housing provision, we respectfully would request you all support and approval of the case. We have our whole team here to answer questions. Mr. Gant, on the play lawn discussion, the retreat case that you referred to is one that Toll Brothers is developing on New Hill Olive Chapel. And they're actually working, and it's still kind of in the fledgling stage of the discussion, they're actually working out a way to try to have the programming for the amenities in each of these communities work with each other, because what they're learning and what they have learned in these 55 and older communities, it's less to do with kind of what you physically put on the ground and more to do with how programming is handled. And so one of the things that they're looking at, one of the reasons they don't have the request for the reduced play lawn in this particular instance, is they actually think that there's a way to marry up the two communities and use the advantages of the play lawn here, and with respect to the kind of more active adult things that were incorporated into that case, essentially kind of cross-pollinate those two. So that's why that request hasn't been made in this case. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions as well as our team of consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Any questions for?
I was curious about mobility access, given this is going to be a 55 and older potential community. I know you said the primary bedrooms will be downstairs in all units, but is there any more work to be done with mobility access with these?
You mean in terms of like at-grade entrances, or I don't know, Jeff, if that's something that you want to come up? Yeah. And this is Jeff Westmoreland with Toll Brothers.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Westmoreland with Toll Brothers. That is always a concern when we talk about active adult communities, whether it be detached product or attached product. Again, the master down is just one component of that. The individual site grading around these units is carefully planned as we go through the process to address that, so that we're not don't have steep driveways, multiple steps into the units, steep yards and things like that. And so we found that this segment of the market appreciates that. And so we strive really hard for all of our active adult projects to really look at that, both inside the units and how that works, and also outside in terms of the lot grading, the movement around the site, movement from the units to the play lawn area. Those are all definitely taken into consideration.
Thank you.
So,
Can you speak a little bit to the traffic impact? I know you made reference to that being a 55 and older community, that the impact wasn't going to be too great, but can you walk me through a little bit of kind of the details behind that?
Yes, I cannot, but we have our consultant here who certainly can. I could, but I'm wholly unqualified to do so.
Hi, my name is Lisa Lundeen. I'm with Exalt Engineering. When we switched to the age-restricted community, the trips do reduce by about 30% in the peak hour. So it is a pretty significant drop in traffic volumes.
The peak hours that you're referring to are the kind of the morning AM
Yes.
time period?
Yep, the commuter peak hour from about 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
And did the assessment go into, or make an assessment as to the traffic along Chapel Ridge, kind of, along that stretch, not just the Olive Chapel roadway?
We only analyzed the trip generation of the actual site itself and not the volumes on the adjacent roadways. And so that was just the numbers that were coming in and out of that site.
Is that because of the size of this, it doesn't require the traffic analysis?
Yes, to the relatively small size of the development, the town or NCDOT did not require a capacity analysis.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had a couple for Mr. Barron. Sorry. Did you guys think about a crosswalk across Olive Chapel, a way to increase mobility in that way? And if not, would you? That's one question. And also, I'd like to hear your answer about the domino theory about this neighborhood and your feelings about the appropriateness and with the neighbors that are here right
If
now.
you've ever asked me about my feelings, Brett, that's very nice of you. Kidding, of course. So on the domino effect, I'll start there, and then I'll go back to your initial question. I think I wasn't at the meeting when a discussion occurred associated with whether all of this should come in at the same time. In a perfect world, every piece of property that could possibly develop consistent with the town's land use plan would come in at the same time. And that's true for parcels like this that are essentially the front door of an established neighborhood. It's also true for sites that happen to be across the street from each other. It's just easier if folks are moving through at the same time. As a land use attorney, I'll tell you that as individual owners, I believe they should have the right to be able to develop their property consistent with the policies that have been adopted by the town, and that those are the guiding policies, that the guiding policies state this is what we want from a land use planning standpoint, these are our transportation policies, these are our affordable housing policies, and they should be allowed to be judged based upon those policies, not at the whim of, well, are the rest of my neighbors willing to participate in the sale or not? So I don't think, again, I'm a land use attorney, and I believe in the right of people to be able to use their land consistent with the town's adopted policies. I don't believe it's inappropriate at all. With respect to the crossing, we haven't had that conversation before tonight. That's the first I've heard of that request. I'll talk to Jeff about it and see if that's something that could be baked in. I don't have any appreciation for what the cost is for something like that. And I don't know if you've got information on that front. If not, I can ask Russell. That will be an impactful part of that conversation, I suspect, from my client's perspective, and that is what would the cost be. But I don't. Certainly, if it's a safety enhancement, I think Toll's initial response will be yes. We want to ensure the safety of our future residents. I just need to have a conversation with them about that because tonight's the first time we've heard that. Yep.
Well, actually, I need to follow up about the domino. I mean, would you have said the same thing if it had been in the middle of the neighborhood versus the front, as far as the appropriateness of not having it come in as a whole? Is there a difference there, you think?
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to talk about that, honestly. I'll give you my opinion. I think it's harder to justify You know, it's harder to provide justification associated with it. I do believe that the land use plan is supposed to work within the context of the land use plan. And as these neighbors will tell you, when I've talked to them, you know, what we try to achieve on rezonings is not only to make sure that what comes forward is consistent with the town's expectation with respect to development of property, but also consistent with the community's expectation associated with development of property. And so when you see buffers get increased because there is an existing home that might not otherwise be there, but for the fact that it hasn't redeveloped, I do think that those are, you have to make site-specific determinations with respect to zoning questions. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But ultimately, I think the town's adopted policies should be the overarching concern. And while, you know, if there were, you know, a pocket of this neighborhood that wanted to come forward and develop for townhomes or apartments or whatever the case may be, I think it's only fair to judge them against the town's adopted plans, take a look at what's around it, go through the town's process, and treat everybody the same in that regard.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Barry? Okay, thank you so much. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for comment. And first to speak tonight on our sign-in sheet, please pardon me if I mess up your name, Elizabeth Starrett. Got it? If you could, for the record, just give us your name and address, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Starrett, and I live at 1216 12 Oaks Lane in Apex. Chapel Ridge Road is one of the first neighborhoods created on all of Chapel Road. It is a beautiful country-like street with homes that have unique and beautiful character. With all the growth and changes that have occurred in and around Apex, I understand that some of these original quiet qualities may have been lost. There might be some original families ready to sell or move back to the country or closer to their family, or maybe the lots are becoming difficult to keep up with, and the office building and increased traffic is bothersome. But there is a real need for neighborhoods just like the Chapel Ridge Road neighborhood. Many families are searching for homes that have larger lots in this central location. I know that if these houses were listed, they would be sure to sell in this market. I'm aware of several families in just my circle of friends that are looking for houses on larger lots in a central location that they could make their own. I'm also aware that several families have left Apex to find a little bit more land with a house on it to raise their families on. It is hard to come by this type of neighborhood right in the middle of Apex. So why not keep that option available for families seeking that? With so many townhomes and apartments and new home builds going up all around Apex and these specific neighborhoods quickly diminishing, I would like to see the unique character of an original neighborhood stay. It has a country feel, but so close to town, providing that unique town and country living that many families are seeking. I do have a concern if the townhomes were to go up in this location. My concern is with the traffic. The traffic is already congested at all of Chapel and Kelly Road. With the addition of townhomes and possibly apartment traffic, traffic is sure to increase. During school hours and rush hour, this will especially add to an already backed up congested intersection. And with the average person still working until the age of 65 and offices being open again, this will add to some of the congestion. I personally witnessed one accident and a few near misses at this intersection. I'd like to see some improvements of this intersection take place first. Maybe adding a turn lane for the school would help with the traffic backup. Finally, although I would like to see the Chapel Ridge Road neighborhood stay, I understand sometimes a compromise is needed. Instead of dividing up this original and unique neighborhood, I would only like to see townhomes near the front of the neighborhood. This would leave some of the original character of Chapel Ridge Road and not break up the neighborhood entirely. This would help Apex to accommodate some more growth while still providing some original town and country options for families seeking that. Thank you for your time, consideration, and serving the people of Apex.
Thank you, Ms. Starrett. All right, next speaker is David Priestbrot. I want to remind you, you have 3 minutes.
David Prescott. I live at 1313 Chapel Ridge Road with my wife Sarah, and that's the property immediately to the north of this proposal. I'm the guy with the pond. Are we happy about this? Not really. But by the same token, I can't think of anything that would be much better than what's being proposed. It's consistent with the town's plan, long-term plan. It's 2 stories instead of 3, which I think is going to blend in with the surrounding neighborhoods, including our own, much better. The 55 plus is definitely an advantage. It's transitional, which I have always understood is a philosophy of the town in new developments to try to be transitional from one neighborhood to the next. And lastly, I would say that Toll Brothers has been very good to work with. We have met with them a number of times. They've listened to our concerns, as you've heard. They've tried to address things where they could. And all of that considered, I think this is probably the best possible solution for our neighborhood, and I would encourage you to vote in favor of it. Sometime in the future, you're going to be seeing another project in our neighborhood that we have very different feelings about, as some of you may already know, and we'll be back to talk about those then. Regarding your concern about a crosswalk, I think it's a great idea, but not along this length of property. To the west, towards Flex 540, where the land is level, I can see it working. But as someone who walks this neighborhood often, with the hill coming right there, there's not going to be a safe place to cross, I don't think. I'd be all for it, because I walk all over the place. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. Rita Borkin.
Good evening. My name is Rita Boykin, and I live on Clark Farm Road in Chapel Ridge. It's a small neighborhood of 21 home sites. We have lived in Apex since the mid-1970s and in Chapel Ridge for the past 32 years. Our neighborhood always knew that 540 would be built, but we did not foresee all the development that would take place on the perimeter and at the entrance to our neighborhood. Flex 540, Beaver Creek, Hempstead, Olive Chapel Professional Park. For the most part, we have adjusted to those changes, even though we were not happy about them. Today, Toll Brothers' proposal, if approved, will forever change the landscape of our neighborhood, to say nothing of a proposal for apartments, which will soon be on your agenda. Years ago, after our covenants expired, the neighborhood talked about the future of Chapel Ridge, and it was the consensus of the homeowners to sell individually when someone wanted to sell, or else the entire neighborhood needed to sell to a developer at one time. All or nothing, not piecemeal, as that would adversely affect the neighborhood. So much for consensus. I want to put one thing in here that's not in here. Our neighborhood is probably roughly 60 acres or so. We have not, in hearing even from a developer, they said they didn't even couldn't handle 60 acres. 25 acres was pretty much all they wanted. So that, the whole neighborhood, even though a lot of the neighbors knew that those of us in the middle didn't want to even move, there never seemed to be no one ever came to the whole neighborhood and said, we'd like to buy you out. It's been done piecemeal. Unfortunately, what is happening now is because the Canes, the Bunns, and the Hensons have joined forces with 2 adjoining homeowners to sell to a developer to the detriment of Chapel Ridge. Their reasons are their own, but likely among them are Olive Chapel Professional Park's undeveloped construction site that has been and continues to be an eyesore. A special concern to those 3 named homeowners would be the uncertainty of what John Gazarowski planned to do with his neighboring property, which is now one of the 4 home sites on Barnside included in this proposal. Property, like that of John's undeveloped office park, poorly maintained. There is a possibility that soon our small single-family home neighborhood for 35 years will be 6 different developments. 6, piecemeal after all. Ours is not a transient neighborhood. It is our intention, and some of our neighbors as well, to live here for the foreseeable future. Ray and I would like Chapel Ridge to remain single-family homes. That's our first choice. But since some of our neighbors are determined to sell to a developer, we have to look at what is being proposed for their properties. And today's proposal by Toll Brothers is better than their first proposal, and one we can live with and adjust to. We acknowledge that Toll Brothers' proposal adheres to the 2045 land use map for medium density, and appreciate them not trying to circumvent that plan. It is extremely disappointing that those homeowners who wish to sell wouldn't have just sold to an individual buyer. Their decision to combine their properties and sell to a developer has not only affected their neighbors, but could be changing our small neighborhood from single-family homes to mixed residential, something at one time they did not want. Yet, just a second, I'll add 2 sentences. Yet here they are doing to us what they did not want done to them, a decision they now have to live with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Ann Kane.
I'm Ann Kane. I live at 1401 Barnside. I'm one of my husband and I live in one of the properties that is proposed for the development. What we found is that with the development around us, we needed to consider all of our options, not just selling individually, but what else was possible. Since we first moved into the neighborhood, we were told at my first meeting with Diane Kinn that this was going to be developed someday. And what we've found now is that we need to move, our neighbors needed to move. It sounded like a good time for us to put the lots together in an organized fashion that the town could live with and that our neighbors could live with. We know that we'll never get 20 families to all sell at the same time. And to try and think of the whole neighborhood going at once, it's just not going to happen. So personally, I'm a real estate agent. I feel like the 2-story townhomes are a pleasant transition between the single-family homes to the south, the homes to the east, the office park to the west, and then the other neighbors in Chapel Ridge. We need to move because we have family concerns, and we can't wait until the whole neighborhood is ready. So I hope you'll support this. I feel like they've done so much to lessen school impact, to provide that pretty transition. Toll House is wonderful to work with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. All right, this is the last person signed up to speak tonight, so therefore we'll go ahead and close public hearing comment period. And it's back to council for more discussion leading to a possible motion.
I do want to address the crosswalk issue. I agree that a crosswalk is needed somewhere, but I also agree with the statement that this is probably not the best place to do it because of the topography of that road. Going out there and walking that myself is dangerous, and you cannot, the sight line is not good at all. So I would be very concerned about having a crosswalk along this property line. Further down, possibly, might be a better option. You know, considering that the previous rezoning that came before us, you know, and what that looked like compared to this is night and day compared to what we saw the last time. And, you know, having the 55 plus community, that is a segment of the population that we don't have a lot of housing for. Not a lot of housing for master down, or, you know, ground level entry into housing. So I think that that's a good thing that takes that all into account. The transition from this toward the single family homes, I feel like is a better transition than what the proposal we saw previously for rezoning. And it sounds like Toll Brothers has done a fairly good job of working with the neighbors in the area to make sure that as many concerns that are addressed as possible. So right now, I'm pretty satisfied.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Others?
And I'll just, pardon as I kind of chime in because I'm using this to help explain my analysis, because to me this is one of those discussions which really brings out, I think, kind of the blessing and curse of Apex. The blessing is that we have a lot of folks who have very large lots, and unfortunately we are in a position right now where you can make a lot of money on those lots. I will say that, you know, as we start to look at the transitions that we're going to be seeing today and that we're continuing to see when it comes to development. A lot of my concerns that I really have in this case revolve around that community and neighborhood continuity. I think it's important that, these neighborhoods try to maintain some sort of character, and it hurts me to see kind of the piecemeal breaking up of these sort of neighborhoods. I think it can become quite frankly, a very good development strategy when you have an area this large where you can basically go in and cherry pick who you want as your buyers or as your sellers, so that you can basically take that 60 acres and break it down to the 20 acres that you need. I have concerns about that, but at the same time, I also recognize that if someone's a landowner and they want to be able to sell their property and be able to do it for maximum value, I find it very difficult to say that as a governmental body, we should prevent somebody from being able to do what they want with their land. And that, to me, is kind of the big tension that takes place with these sort of discussions. I'm very appreciative of the applicant's ability and what you guys have done to work with those neighbors. I think that's incredibly important. I think what you've done with regard to the affordable housing aspect, incredibly important. I appreciate and feel like the change to the 55 and older community is absolutely critical because it's an area that we have a need for within Apex. And I think it does help mitigate some of the traffic concerns that I voiced in the past. So I thank the applicant for making those changes and for putting those things forward and working with the community. But this is a tough one because I do feel like we are ultimately taking a larger neighborhood. And as I've told some folks who from that neighborhood, when I first moved to Apex, I was looking for a house there. It pains me a little bit to watch a neighborhood like this just kind of break down piece by piece. But I also recognize that what we're looking at now in terms of the development, I think that's our best case scenario. I think it provides and hits a lot of the needs that we have, and looking at it from the standpoint of the larger picture of the town's needs, I think it fits those things, as well as allowing the individual landowner the opportunity to utilize their property in a way that's best. So I feel like that tension is there. But as I start to look at the balance of those tensions, I feel like this part of the development is probably our best case scenario. I will tell you that my analysis completely changes, though, as I look at deeper into the housing area, because I think we start to change a lot of what we have in our land planning desires, the continuity of neighborhoods and things of that nature. I think we start to see the change on those sort of things a little bit more. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
I'll just add really quickly. I don't want to belabor any of these points, but I just want to say thank you, Jason, and to your team and to your client, Toll Brothers, for addressing both council concerns that we heard last time we were here and neighbor concerns. And with regard to 55 plus, I think it's fantastic that it's going to lessen the impact on school capacity, but also, as Councilmember Gray was saying, there's a huge need in Apex for this type of housing. A lot of people want to move in here to be closer to family, closer to grandkids, and there's nowhere for them to go right now. So these communities are desperately needed, and I'm glad to see them built, regardless of the school issue. This is a product that we need of the first floor masters and 2-story. It's great. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else?
Well, first of all, I was wondering if there's any discussion about the crosswalk. I know we have a disagreement, but I'm debating between maybe not the best place versus no crosswalk. So I was wondering if there's any consideration on that, first of all.
I chatted with Jeff. It's something we're going to look at. I don't think it's a condition we're inclined to add right now. You raise a great point. Jeff, before the speaker spoke about the concerns associated with the grade, and before Councilwoman Killingsworth mentioned that, his initial response was just not sure if we'd be able to find a spot that would ensure safety for future residents, especially for a 55 and older community. But it's definitely something that we're going to take a look at during the development plan process, because getting people out into the sidewalks is important to Toll as well.
Okay. Yeah. Councilmember, I wonder if there's, if you let me ask, like, are there standards here? Because Olive Chapel rises up to kind of crest right around here. And no matter where you put that crosswalk, either if you're, it's creating a blind spot either from people coming east or west. If you put too far, too close to it, but, not right on it. So it does look like it needs to be a significant distance from that crest, just kind of as a layman looking at it. I wonder if there's some sort of standard where, with this topography, you need to be 100 feet or 150 feet away from it or something. But the problem we have is there's no sidewalks farther to the west to connect over to.
Yeah,
Professional Park.
and maybe the west is flatter and better, but it's just busier there too, with right closer to Publix. There's a bridge right there. It's just kind of suboptimal in that way. So
Well, at the Peakway and Ambergate, there is quite a big crest. You're coming down the Peakway, but it's an appropriate amount of distance, and I'm not quite sure exactly how far. But it's enough that people can slow down significantly there anytime that light is flashing. So I don't know that there's enough distance here to meet that same thing, especially at 45 through there. So just my thoughts knowing that crest.
okay, yeah.
Councilmember, my thoughts on that are, I have a hard time placing any regulatory or administrative burdens on a person when this clearly needs a lot more study. I mean, I'm not sure, engineering-wise, what would get us there, and I have a hard time saying, all right, well, we want you to undertake this burden, not knowing the extent of cost, expense, or even feasibility.
Yeah, I mean, the original sin was obviously not building that bridge wider and not connecting it, but yeah,
Right.
which I regret now.
Okay. I just want to say, I know there's a lot of history with this area. There's a lot of strong feelings about this. And I've been out there myself and seen the area. And I just want to say I really appreciate all the work and the time that everyone has put into this. And this is a pattern that we're seeing coming before us, and I really appreciate it, where neighbors are really talking with developers, and it's just good collaboration. And it takes time and it's hard work, but I think at the end, it's the right thing to do. And I really appreciate the affordable housing, the school capacity being addressed, the traffic issues, and also particularly on Chapel Ridge Road, the fence and the buffer that you all are doing, because I really think that's going to help the neighbors who are there address some of their longstanding concerns. So I will support this project, and I think it's going to have a lot of positives for our community.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, motion to approve, Mayor Pro Tem Killingsworth.
I second it.
Second, Stallings. Further discussion?
I just want to say I think I'm opposed because my concerns from the last development were the land use I don't believe is still right, and the road, Chapel Ridge Road is not connected still. And that may change with another development, but that's still the case. So I think my concerns are still unchanged, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
All right, motion carries 4-1. Thank you. All right, public hearing 2. Public hearing to consider and receive public input on providing an economic development incentive for Project Real in accordance with the town's policy development investment plan. Manager Purvis.
Yes. Mayor, members, Town Council, Ms. Helms sends her apologies. She is under the weather and was unable to make it, so I told her I'd cover for her. What you have before you is a request for economic development incentive policy for approval for Project Real. This would be a distribution facility. I don't have her slides, but I believe I can get you to, there you go, that works. So for, that's the site. This is at the intersection of 751 and US 64. What we're asking for is just the standard policy. So this is 90% grant back for 3 years. Everything, the basic criteria does meet our policy in terms of job creation. It's just 200 plus jobs. The investment is 25.5 million at this point. And the average salary is, this was a little bit different in that it's actually in Chatham County, not in Apex. So we took the average between Wake County and Chatham, and the average salary is actually slightly higher than that average, the average salary for the Chatham Wake combined. So it does meet our policy thresholds. And unless you have any questions, I'll let you open the public hearing, Mayor.
Okay, so no vote tonight, just open.
No, it would vote on the approval of the policy, and we have standard language and everything that we, that goes along with this. We would submit that to the company for their legal to work, overlook and go from there.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item. Do we have anyone sign up? Okay. No one to sign up, so we'll close public hearing for comment, and it's back to council for discussion. Any discussion?
Is there any estimation on salary ranges that these jobs?
The average salary is about 56,000. I don't know the exact range. We just get the average, but obviously that's the average is around 56,000.
Other questions, discussion?
Is there any concern about discussing and voting on the economic development package before we discuss and vote on the annexation and rezoning?
I mean, it goes away if it doesn't happen. I mean, there's no other commitment. It just
Yeah.
because so the receipt of the grant is contingent upon meeting the investment and the jobs. So if there's just never happened, it just never.
I was just curious, with annexation, sometimes we just lump it all together.
Yep.
There's a statutory
So,
reason that we have to kind of.
It's prefer. So there's obviously lots of talks already going on behind the scenes, and then there's the schedule that companies trying to meet versus what we do. With our policies, there is competition with sites, and so we do try and make sure that we develop these policies, or the grant is approved in advance of kind of that final piece. I mean, and so there was still site decision going on. It's just the timing does kind of crunch it together.
Any other? All right, ready to vote? Motion, right?
Motion to approve.
I second it.
All right, got a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I'm excited to see this happen.
All right, same here. Anybody else? All right, we'll vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, passes unanimously. Move now to public hearing 3, 4, and 5. Will be heard together, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bunce.
Trifecta.
Yes.
Okay, so the first item, let me get my packet here. Okay. So the first item is the proposed land use map amendment for this assemblage, which is about just over 132 acres located at the northeast corner of the intersection of North Carolina Highway 51 and US Highway 64. This area is currently designated on the Chatham County Future Land Use and Conservation Plan as an employment center. And this employment center, in the Chatham County's description, targets areas for future job-generating uses and settings that meet today's workplace expectations. And there's an expectation for a mix of uses, including industrial, office, and supporting retail and other uses, arterial, collector, and local streets, and private drives for local and regional accessibility are expected. And so we believe that the proposed industrial employment land use classification is consistent with that employment center designation of the current Chatham County plan, and we have had coordination with Chatham County planning staff on that as well. Okay. Any questions about the land use map amendment?
I'm kind of curious as to if we're going to do a more, have there been any discussion with Chatham County on a more comprehensive update to our land use plan to include larger regions of Chatham County? And I'm looking at their map, and it looks like it's just this node here that they have for light industrial or whatnot.
So we have not at this time had conversations with Chatham County about a further interlocal land use plan between them. I know they did that with Gary some years ago, but it took years to go through the process. But what we are committed to do, planning staff, is to look at what is in our, at least at what's in our jurisdiction to the east of here, because this definitely, indicates a change, at least from our side of the line, and take a comprehensive look at the land use and transportation plan for the area around this site.
So actually, today I just submitted my budget goals for our department, and I included the area even in Chatham County, because we're going to need to look at this area, because we're going to continue to get these requests. It will probably be a long, painful process, but we are proposing to start that
Okay.
next budget year.
All right. So on this item, the planning board did recommend approval unanimously at their meeting on March 14th. Okay. So moving on along, same property, same area. The property, since it is not in our jurisdiction or our ETJ, they must request annexation at the time of rezoning. And so you can see this is the current corporate limits and ETJ map. It does sit kitty corner to our existing ETJ. And the existing zoning in Chatham County is R1 residential, and we'll get into that as we move into the rezoning. But any questions on the annexation? Okay.
I guess I just wanted to ask briefly, is there any sort of statutory difference between annexing across counties like this that we have to care about, or is it just a different name you put in the form somewhere when we, different register of deeds to send the thing to?
Different, it gets recorded in Chatham County versus Wake County.
But there's no reason at all Apex can't grow? Okay.
Okay, so as I was mentioning before, with this assemblage, the current zoning is residential 1 in Chatham County, and the surrounding zoning is Wake County R80W to the east, and mostly R1 in Chatham County to the west, north, and the west and the south, with a little property to the west that's light industrial conditional use. The proposed zoning is light industrial conditional zoning, and if the land use map amendment is approved, then the proposed rezoning will be consistent with the land use designation. The applicant conducted their neighborhood meeting in December, and you have that report. I've gone through the land use map classification and appropriateness. The applicant has proposed 33 uses for the site, and I'm just going to highlight a few. Restaurant, medical and business professional office, research facility, glass sales, truck terminal, building supplies wholesale, laboratory, industrial research, machine or welding shop, warehousing, wholesaling general, manufacturing and processing, as a summary of those uses. For 3 of those uses, they've proposed use conditions. Machine or welding shop is allowed with the exception of welding associated with automobiles. Building supplies wholesale shall not exceed 200,000 square feet and shall not include more than 15% of the building square footage as outdoor storage. The used glass sales shall be all indoors except what is stored on trucks. Outdoor truck parking must be fully screened from any public right-of-way. The applicant has offered several of the environmental conditions proposed by or suggested by the Environmental Advisory Board, and those include tree replanting, managing stormwater to the 25-year storm, and to name a few. They've also proposed several architectural conditions as suggested by staff. And then there are 3 transportation conditions. The first condition is that the development shall dedicate public right-of-way for the future interchange at 64 and 751, consistent with the area shown in Exhibit 1, and that is what is on the screen now. In the hatched area, north is to the right. This area is based on the outermost limit of interchange concepts evaluated by NCDOT at the time of rezoning. This dedication shall be included in development plans and occur at the time of subdivision final plat or site plan final plat, whichever occurs first, for any parcels adjacent to 64 and 751 as applicable. If NCDOT has approved an interchange design prior to the first plat that is less than the area shown on Exhibit 1, the development shall only be required to dedicate what's in the approved interchange design. Condition 2, the development shall dedicate a 60-foot right-of-way with 30-foot public road construction easement on each side for a public roadway extending from 751 to the eastern boundary of the rezoned parcels. The location of the connection to 751 is subject to NCDOT and town review and approval. The terminus at the eastern edge of the rezoned parcels is subject to town review and approval. The right-of-way and public road construction easement shall be directly adjacent to the highway buffer of the right-of-way dedicated, accommodating the future interchange at 64 and 751. The development shall contribute a $1 million payment in lieu for the future construction of the collector road. And finally, condition 3, all lots within the development shall have frontage on a public street. The development shall construct a minimum of 2 stub street connections to adjacent parcels that have no frontage along public streets or only have frontage along 751. The location of the stub streets shall be subject to town review and approval. So the intent of that public street is a road that would come up and serve the property here and provide future connections for redevelopment of the parcels to the west. The next section is transportation planning concerns. Staff requested the applicant provide a condition requiring the construction of a minor collector street from NC 751 to the eastern boundary of the site. For context, the US 64 corridor study, which the town participated in, includes a collector in the long-term solution for the future interchange here. That collector street is intended to provide connectivity from Wake County to 751 as access to Highway 64 is restricted. As of today, the applicant is only committed to dedicating the right-of-way and construction easements for that road, along with a $1 million payment in lieu. The need to provide connectivity from 751 to the east in Wake County is critical, and transportation staff in both planning and public works and transportation still strongly support a condition that requires construction of the road. Our proposed wording even include if permitting by the Corps was not allowed to cross streams. Oh, here's an image I created of this is my own Photoshop. So this is not to scale road design or anything. There's been no design work for this future collector street. If the Corps would not provide permitting of the stream crossing due to not knowing the terminus of the road, then construct as far as possible and then provide a fee in lieu for the remainder. If the road is not constructed with the development of the site, it pushes the burden of building the road onto the town or a future developer to the east. It also increases the difficulty of roadway construction once site development has occurred and increases the likely disruption to existing businesses. Without a roadway design, it is also difficult to determine the width needed for construction easements beyond the right-of-way offered and the appropriate payment in lieu amount. Staff believes that the proposed $1 million fee in lieu amount may be much less than what it will cost to build the collector street and recommends following the UDO standard of requiring an engineer's estimate to determine the fee in lieu amount. Planning staff can only recommend approval of the rezoning if transportation Condition 2 is offered as requested by staff, and it's a lot of wording, so essentially requiring the construction of the road as far as possible and fee in lieu for the remainder to the property line, depending upon permitting. Even allowing, supporting the reduction of the right-of-way width to 50 feet instead of 60 feet as part of that construction. The Planning Board held a public hearing on March 14th and unanimously recommended approval with the consideration by the applicant to add additional conditions related to applying the draft Jordan Lake nutrient removal regulations, and 2, increase fee in lieu to be agreed upon by developer and staff prior to the town council meeting. So for the first condition about the Jordan Lake rules, I spoke with Water Resources staff, and basically the state standards, which is what we've adopted in our stormwater manual, is the gold standard and achieves the intent of the Jordan Lake rules. So that may, depending upon the amount of impervious surface that's directed toward the stormwater ponds, that may require a larger SCM to ensure those rules are met. But I've been assured by Water Resources staff that the draft Jordan Lake rules would be met. Based on UDO standards. And I've not received any information from the applicant about an increase in the fee in lieu amount. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Ms. Bunce?
And I'll,
quick comment.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to say award-winning Water Resources Department now.
Yes, yes.
Tonight, so.
So just proof we can, trust what they say. Yes. And I do want to add, because this is part of the analysis statement, I need to add this. If amended as proposed by staff, the 2045 land use map would be consistent with the proposed rezoning. And from a land use perspective, approval of the rezoning is reasonable in the public interest because it does allow for non-residential development and provides for the interchange right-of-way. And it will allow development that will generate jobs and increase the tax base. However, from a transportation perspective, it's not reasonable and in the public interest in that it does not meet the needs for the transportation network for the area, as I've previously stated.
Any other questions or comments?
kind of question here. It's my understanding that there are significant streams and wetlands and areas along that border, making it difficult to make a proper crossing, transportation-wise in that area. Is that?
Well, we don't have enough information to know if a proper crossing is allowed. What Army Corps wants is to know, they want to know termini to termini. They want to know end to end and what the route is before they will approve a road crossing the stream. And so with just saying, can we build just this segment, their answer is typically, no, we don't want you to build just a crossing to end at this property line, not knowing where it will go from here. And so that's why staff added some information in our suggested zoning condition that said, build it as far as Army Corps will permit at this time with a fee in lieu based upon an engineer's estimate for the remainder of the roadway. So the anticipation is that it would likely be built to somewhere before the stream crossing with the fee in lieu for the remainder.
Good job on the illustration.
Oh, thanks.
What's the light green? Is that like perennial versus?
So, so the hatched area is the dedication for the interchange. The green is a 50-foot highway buffer. This light green is wetlands that have been identified on the site. And it's hard to see the riparian buffer, but this is a stream. This portion of the stream, I believe, has a 100-foot buffer, with this lighter blue portion having a 50-foot buffer. And so there's some yellow area indicating the buffer. It's kind of hard to see, but working with the best resources I had.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, does the applicant wish to add?
Mayor Gilbert, members of the council, thank you in advance for the time. My name is Walker Gorham. I'm a senior principal and Triangle Market Lead for Beacon Partners, the proposed development partnership master developer. If I could, I'd like to just provide a couple quick highlights on the proposed development concept plan, and then address a few of the revisions to the concept plan based on feedback and direction from staff, from the Environmental Advisory Board, and then from some of our outreach from the adjacent neighbors, namely the residential property owners directly to the north on 751 that we had the opportunity to connect with, both in the formal meeting but also in one-on-one meetings in the recent weeks that have led to some material revisions to the proposed facility in question. And then would like to close with a few closing remarks from Hager Rand, the president of Durham Coca-Cola Bottling. I guess first and foremost, though, I did sincerely, and I did this last week, but want to thank the entire planning staff. This is probably the most nuanced site that I've had the pleasure of working on. It requires coordination with multiple county jurisdictions, multiple planning staffs, multiple economic development teams, and all on a fairly tight timeline, given the urgency from Durham Coca-Cola Bottling. And so to get the responsiveness that we have and the collaboration, even at times when we didn't come to complete agreement, greatly appreciated. So I guess with that, as outlined by Amanda in the summary presentation, the proposed concept plan calls for a master plan business park, and I did want to highlight that the project will be anchored by a build-to-suit headquarters facility relocation for Durham Coca-Cola Bottling, but it's also intended to be a first-class master plan business park that would support office, R&D, and life science uses, which we're seeing just a surge in demand across our portfolio statewide, in addition to just distribution and warehousing. Ultimately, the first headquarters facility that's being contemplated by Durham Coca-Cola Bottling calls for approximately $25+ million of investment, with a subsequent $75+ million in the second building, for a total of $100+ million and over 500 projected jobs created at the project. With respect to the concept plan revisions and some of the feedback received, just a couple things to highlight. If I could just go back, Amanda, to your exhibit here. So for members of the council, the initial concept plan that we presented to staff originally contemplated the headquarters facility located at the hard corner and vicinity of the hard corner near the proposed interchange improvements. And based off of feedback from the Environmental Advisory Board, confirmation of our wetlands delineation, which, as Amanda highlighted, we have both perennial streams and wetlands that span our eastern property boundary, effectively across the whole boundary, as well as some of the feedback from the 3 adjacent property owners to the north. Durham Coca-Cola Bottling has agreed, and we've committed to shifting their proposed building over 600 feet to the east, or excuse me, to the north, page right, to the center of your concept plan, such that we can limit the impact so that none of the perennial stream network will have to be impacted vis-a-vis a national permit with the Corps. Additionally, that provides for over 600 feet of buffering between the adjacent residents to the north and the proposed building envelope for the Coca-Cola facility. And also, and equally as important in our view, provides max flexibility for DOT and for the town, given just the preliminary nature of their concept design for the interchange improvements. I.e., we didn't want the facility to potentially have to be relocated, renovated, or reconfigured as it relates to its truck court or access drives in the event of a design change by DOT in the future. With respect to the open transportation comments, I did want to provide just a quick overview. I think it's helpful context from our collective team's perspective. We view our total investment in the public infrastructure as just fungible gross dollars. We recognize and take the partnership with the town and the county seriously. And we feel like our commitment to fund approximately $9.8 million of public infrastructure improvements demonstrates that. We are strongly of the view that when you force rank the priority of those improvements, first and foremost, we need to extend public utilities to service this employment center. We're proposing to do so by extending them from the Deer Creek subdivision from the south all the way across 64 up 751 to service the project. But notably, I've also committed to provide and construct regional capacity, i.e. to not just service our proposed development, but also to service water and sewer capacity for the entire employment center 751 corridor. Additionally, we have committed to the right-of-way dedication, as Amanda highlighted. And again, we're paying what will be record-setting per acre pricing for commercial property in Chatham County, and dedicating that at no cost to DOT, approximately 15 acres, and then the requested dedication to the town for the 3+ acres of collector road. Additionally, we've agreed and committed to constructing and then subsequently dedicating our access drive. So building that road to a public standard off of 751 that would span across the top of our property boundary and eventually connect in to the additional property to the north. And so as contemplated, we're responsible for the design and construction, and then we'll dedicate that public road back to the town. And then lastly, with respect to the collector street, and really the only open item with respect to transportation comments and conditions, we have proposed dedication of that 3 acres plus the fee and lieu payment of $1 million. I think our principal concern remains just the stage of design for both DOT and for the town. We have conducted our wetlands delineation, and we know there's known environmental concerns, and based off of correspondence with NCDOT and with the Corps, we are confident we would not even receive permitting. And Amanda highlighted that, which was, we felt like a reasonable response to stub the road. I guess as developers, my concern there is the useful life of an asphalt road, particularly that's going to be serviced off of a major interchange like this. We think will be past its useful life by the time the road is even put into production. NCDOT is projecting that this interchange would not get completed until 2030 plus. That's today. So by the time NCDOT was in a position to complete the interchange, the overpass that would correspond with this collector road. Our fear would be we would be spending and investing good dollars early on in a stub road that would ultimately potentially require redesign or repair once it's put into production. And so we feel like the fee in lieu is more appropriate from the town's perspective. And again, we completely appreciate Russell's position and the staff's position. We understand the connectivity is going to be critical. And if staff deems that they want to reprioritize that collector road above some of the utility infrastructure that we've committed to fund, we're open to that. But just want to make clear that as a development partnership, we're at that threshold, at $10 million. And so, again, we hope that that partnership and that investment demonstrates our commitment to the project. So with that, I'd like to introduce Hager Rand, the president of Durham Coca-Cola Bottling, for a few closing remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Walker. Mayor and council members, we are excited. I've got two of my managers here with me. We've announced this to our employees that we're getting ready to consolidate our operations into a new location. We couldn't say 100% it's going to be here, but this is where we want to be. I'm third generation in the business. My grandfather started it 116 years ago on his birthday in May, and this will be our 6th location. We're a combination of 4 different Coke franchises. My father purchased Roxborough Coca-Cola. He and I together purchased Henderson Coca-Cola. Then recently we purchased Sanford Coca-Cola. So it's 4 different territories pulled together. But we're operating out of 2 locations currently, one in Durham and one in Sanford. The one in Durham's built in 1961, and one in Sanford's 1970. They're outdated. They do not have enough docks to handle the product that we carry. We sell over 4 million cases of product a year, and we desperately need energy efficient and more centrally located facility. So we looked at probably 12 different sites. This became the most prominent one as it had east-west connectivity on 64 and north-south connectivity along 751. And we cover a large area. We go to the Virginia border up near Henderson, North Carolina. We go to Spring Lake, south near Fayetteville, North Carolina, with a fairly 2 to 3 county corridor on either side, east-west. We are absolutely committed to the Coca-Cola Company's worldwide mission of World Without Waste. We had planned to move into this facility as a zero waste facility and keep it that way, sending nothing to the landfill. We want to consolidate these 2 locations that we currently have into a headquarters facility that you would be proud of, and that our Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta would be proud of as well. And we really want to announce this to the area, and your approval is what will help us be able to do that in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Rand.
Any questions for me?
Any questions?
Is there any chance we can rename it to the Apex Coca-Cola Bottling Company if you guys move there? Just throw that out there.
Yeah. We've had quite a few names. We will be changing the name. Not sure what that will be.
I was joking, but okay.
Kind of hard to have it Durham Coca-Cola when it's not in Durham. And we currently operate under Durham Coca-Cola and Sanford Coca-Cola. So we're gonna change the name.
How about Peak Coca-Cola?
Well done. All right,
Thank you so much.
All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for comments. And the first speaker tonight, Jeff Hastings, 2 times tonight. I know. Yes, sir.
So Jeff Hastings, 3609 Friendship Road, Apex 27502. I come to you wearing a hat as a previous board chair of the Chamber of Commerce. Not speaking on their behalf, not had a chance to talk with them. But I'm here to tell you that at the time, 12 years ago, I argued that we needed to seek opportunities like this because we were at an 80% residential, 20% business tax basis, and that was going to get us in trouble at some point in time. And we have an opportunity here for them to come to town, and I think they've offered up a lot of opportunities for us to take a hold of. On that, I'm going to talk about two different issues real quick, and if I've run over time, please tell me. But one is our farm on Friendship Road. In 1980, that farm was intended to be an intersection with US 1. There was going to be an at-grade change. The road was going to be replaced, even though Friendship Road comes in at a diagonal. The neighbors got together and they argued about the cost of that bridge and what it would take and the lives that it would disrupt in our community. If you move forward to today, that bridge is slated to go about a half mile south of us into undeveloped property that is going to be the municipal and industrial park that Holly Springs and Apex is going to share where Amgen is going in. That's on a DOT plan. So had anything come to our property owner, previous property owners before we bought it, that road that might have required to have been built would go unserved. Second of all is a business that I own in Raleigh, North Carolina. In 1983, our store invested a little over $280,000 to rework the front of our store. Our entrance was in the middle of our building. DOT came to us and said Hillsborough Street was going to be widened to a 5-lane road. So we took advance actions. We opened up the corner of our store rather than the middle of our store because our front parking lot was going to be eliminated. I stand here in 2022. Hillsborough Street is a 3-lane road. It has no plans right now to be a 5-lane road. With all due respect to Russell, who I think the world of, DOT has a record of changing their road beds, and they have a plan. They have a history of changing based on funding how long they can fund projects down the road. And from an environmental standpoint, having a farm, asking somebody to build a road that will go unused and unutilized for the next 10 to 15 years is unconscionable a little bit from an environmental standpoint. I think it's a win-win-win for everybody. It's going to be property taxes both for Chatham County as well as Apex. Yeah, I can't think of a better steward for the environment than Coca-Cola. Being part of a third-generation store myself, I hope that you vote in favor of it, but respect your decision either way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings. Steph McKeever.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I know it's getting late. I just wanted to take a minute, and I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of come on the opposite side of what Mr. Hastings said, but I live in one of the properties to the north of this proposal, and I'm going to just discuss a couple of things that I think this project going forward will have a detrimental impact on in that area. First, along 751, I'm sure you've all driven by it and down it before. Obviously, this particular area is very close to the lake. There's a lot of wetlands and streams. There's also a lot of animals. In our backyard, we have bald eagles, hawks, nests there, and it's very popular for people to park on the side of the road, look out over at the bridges. Bikers come down, pull off all the time in our yard, in some of the just shoulders that are available. It's very much kind of a hidden little gem that's still country, still has farms. And introducing this sort of project and the amount of traffic and trucking and noise that will happen if this goes forward will definitely detrimentally impact any of that wildlife that's there. And so that's a big concern. Another one that I will mention is across the street, I guess it's kind of to the southeast, there's a school going in, and then across the street to the southwest, there's a historically designated home that cannot be knocked down, moved, so hopefully one day someone takes that project on. I just don't know if when we're talking about cohesion and neighborhoods, I don't know that a trucking plant that's going to be moving 18-wheelers east and west, north and south across from an elementary school and abutting a bunch of residences and so close to a lake and streams and wild natural resources really makes the most sense. And I'm also a little bit concerned that there wasn't like a third-party environmental impact assessment on that. We heard people tonight talk about sediment and how construction is one of the causes of that leaching into our ponds and our lakes, and that's a lake that we get drinking water from. And my final point will just be that the utilities that are being discussed right now are not being discussed as being brought to any of us to the north. We don't have public water, we don't have public sewer, we don't even have good internet. And I think it's odd that it's just going to be brought across the street to end there, and everyone to the north who will be detrimentally impacted by all this new traffic, et cetera, won't enjoy any of these new privileges. So I would respectfully ask that you vote this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKeever. Tim McKeever.
Thank you all. Tim McKeever, I live at 816 NC 751. I will probably not be as eloquent as my wife just was, but I did want to highlight one specific piece that she didn't speak about in detail that I noticed from the neighborhood meeting transcript and the planning board meeting last week, and that's specifically around the impact on traffic. In the neighborhood meeting and last week, it was rather conclusively stated that there would be no impact on traffic in the adjoining area because a traffic assessment would be done in the future. Every historical traffic impact assessment I have seen of 751 shows that it is already above its peak maximum capacity right now, not to mention going forward. And now we're talking about introducing a site that will, for all intents and purposes, be a truck distribution facility. Sending more 18-wheelers north, south, east, and west around a already too congested area. I would hope that we could get a traffic impact assessment done prior to approval of this to actually see what this impact is going to be, rather than hoping that the impact assessment comes out and says that having 500 more jobs, a majority of which, I shouldn't say majority, I don't know, but also the trucking facility sending trucks up and down 751 and 64. I'd just like to know what that actual traffic assessment would look like going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKeever. All right, that closes public hearing comments, and we'll bring it back before colleagues for discussion.
I am curious, Russell, would you be able to speak to the traffic related to this facility?
So we already anticipate the need for traffic impact analysis as part of the site plan submittal for this, and that would be reviewed by both Apex and NCDOT, and we'll issue comments. NCDOT has already been looking at this area and looking at solutions, not just the interchange, but also short-term solutions for the intersection because of capacity issues in the past. So I'm 100% certain there are going to be some recommendations that come out of the traffic impact analysis.
Can you speak to the question of, I guess, timing? That was brought up. It seems as though that there's kind of a request for a TAI before we get into this stage. Kind of, so timing wise, we basically need to do this in order for us to have a say in that?
Based on our ordinances, the traffic impact analysis is not due at this time. It's not due at rezoning for this. It's due at the time of site plan submittal.
Can you clarify those rules? I'm a little curious as to why there's not one required now versus we've had rezonings where they are required.
A planned unit development rezoning requires a traffic impact analysis at the time of rezoning.
Thank you for clarification.
Other discussion?
Mr. Dalton, I had a follow-up question, and you may not be able to speak to this with confidence, but you said you suspected there'd be some recommendations from a traffic impact analysis. in-house. Could you speculate on what they might be? Could you speculate, or would you prefer not to?
I mean, at the very least, it'd be turn lane recommendations at the intersection of NC 751 and US 64. We have looked at that intersection in the past, and we've been in traffic engineering staff and long-range planning staff have been in discussions with NCDOT concerning short-term and long-term improvements there. There may be some unconventional type intersection design changes, like super street type designs. They may eliminate some left turns, put in some U-turns. I do not anticipate additional travel lanes on US 64. It's still going to be a 4-lane roadway, but definitely turn lanes are needed. And that was identified in the Deer Creek PUD analysis some years ago when they were looking at the commercial portion of Deer Creek. We're also talking with Triangle Math and Science Academy because they will be coming in with the high school, and they will be doing a traffic impact analysis as part of that as well, also reviewed by Apex and NCDOT.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Or is there a motion?
I have another question, Mayor, excuse me. Could someone speak to the couple's, or I think one person's question about the lack of water sewer availability to the residents? Can anyone speak to that?
Clear. So right now, Apex does not have water and sewer in Chatham County. As a matter of fact, we don't even have it all the way to the line. We have the ability to extend it to this area, and we've been in talks with Chatham County actually for a few years about the possibility of us extending for potential economic development at this node. Mr. Mahaffey, you asked about the planning earlier. While there's no formal long-range plan for it, there have been talks between Chatham and Apex, and that goes back several years. I think even before I got here, Marty may be able to verify that or not, but I'm pretty sure David Hughes and Drew Havens have both had talks with Chatham at that point as well. So there's always been a plan, maybe not written, to potentially extend water and sewer, but it's always been specifically for non-residential. That's always been the recommendation of staff, as me coming in, and what I understood to be from previous councils, and it would be the staff recommendation now. So any water and sewer extension is designated specifically for non-residential, for economic development in that area. Our policy, actually it's in the code since 1990, mid-90s, is 92, thank you, Marty. So since early 90s, is that to tap onto Apex water and sewer, you have to annex. There really has not been much desire for Apex to annex residential in Chatham County, and that is a whole nother, there's a lot of other issues and concerns that go with that. So that's the reason. As far as the residential side, there hasn't really been any discussion of water and sewer for residential. And like I said earlier, at this point, there is no water and sewer in Chatham County, like on the ground right now. But we did have plans to extend there. This is an opportunity for us to do so, as well as open up for other potential growth at that intersection. So, but ultimately that will end up being a council decision, as council explores that moving forward as that area grows and expands. And I imagine that would be part of the long-range plan that is looked at as well. So recommendations that would come from the plan that Diane mentioned would be things that council could consider about how you want to move into Chatham County.
Well, let me just say, I do not want to move residential in Chatham County for a whole list of reasons that we've talked about before. But I will point out there's a little bit of a contradiction here in our policy, is we have said if you want to get water and sewer from Apex, you got to annex into Apex. And now we're kind of saying, at least I'm saying, and I feel like it's your position, the staff's position, that we don't want to open that door for the residents surrounding to annex into Apex. So if this were located in Wake County and we encountered someone who's having issues with their well and we're like, hey, Apex can help us out, we'd say, well, you got to annex, and they have that option. The people around here don't have that option. They have no policy. And I know in the past we've allowed people outside of our jurisdiction to connect, and they pay double rate or higher rate or something.
No, actually, no, I don't know that we've had any that. There is an outside rate, but those would either have all other deals associated with that or predate the code.
Okay.
Essentially, the complicating factor is You start using residents in another county, it becomes a nightmare for us in terms of trying to deal with a lot of the other issues, or at least much more complicated than when we're dealing with just commercial.
Right, it is more complicated than we're doing with commercial. I mean, there's ways to do it, obviously, there's plenty of municipalities that do it. It's just, the idea in terms of the longer range planning will definitely help identify it. I don't think there was any expectation that Apex would move into Chatham County much more than beyond that intersection. I mean, it's
And I guess just to bring, I see, maybe that answers my question, but how would you feel about it if we started talking about allowing not residents in Chatham County to annex, but to connect to water and sewer and pay the increased rate? And I guess the fact that all the staff is slowly inching towards the podium here to answer my question on how you feel about this. I see 4 people have all said, well, hold on.
So is your concern that the people who have the single-family homes cannot connect for their single-family homes? Or is the concern that they cannot develop for future residential?
My concern is just general common sense. If someone's well's running low on their property and they have an issue and we can fix it cheaply, I wouldn't want a policy that we have to get in the way of that.
So we've done this a bunch of times down in New Hill where we agree to annex so they can get water and sewer, but they agree to have a zoning condition that limits their ability to subdivide.
But it seems like our current policy precludes them annexing into here if we say we don't want residential.
No, we've done it, is there something else? We've done this in New Hill a bunch,
Yeah.
where we've had folks that we didn't really want them to subdivide, but they needed water and sewer, so there was a zoning condition offered to keep it at 1 home or 2 homes.
Okay.
That's how we've handled it before, I don't know why it would be different, but.
I think the issue,
There's something else, I don't know.
Site 14 in New Hill, when that came around, we allowed that community as part of the part of the Western Wake Plant and Environmental Justice. They were allowed Site 14 only. So the people associated directly on Stewart Street, Church Street, they were allowed to get water and sewer without annexing into the town. They're written in our ordinance clearly. That's an exception to our ordinance rule. If they go and sell their property, which I think is what Dan may be speaking to, then they have to annex in if they make an improvement. As they existed when the plant was built, they could get water and sewer in town rates. We even put the water system in as part of that project. So I think, Mr. Mahaffey, to your question, if the council wanted to look at our policy or to allow within our county or anyone else to actually annex or not annex, but to receive water and sewer and pay out of town rates, which is double our in-town rates, both for the base and the capacity charge, then something like that could be considered. But that would be a change to our policy and ordinance.
yeah, I don't want to fix it tonight. I would just say, if we're going to adopt a policy where we don't want to go forward with residential annexations because of the complications that cause being cross-county and schools and health and human services and all, and the sheriff and everything you got to deal with, then maybe the policy about not allowing utility service unless you have annexations should be revisited and rethought of if we're going to go into Chatham County.
Yeah, so that's a policy issue, not as far as getting the water there, that for an engineering technical issue standpoint, that's different. I mean, obviously, we're much higher than the lake, so pressure and everything at that location is not an issue. So from a technical standpoint, we can push water there. It's a policy issue.
So Councilman, just for the night, have staff research it for later discussion, or are you good?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not looking to change the policy here. I guess I want to throw it out there and make you all nervous. And you think about it when it comes up in 6 months or a year or 2 years as we move into the case.
It's definitely something to be able to think about. I mean, in terms of the policy piece, I mean, everything was written based on, where we are within Wake County, right? So you have a different scenario that presents itself here to be able to discuss. So
Shouldn't we get asked first before we go into this, though? Like,
We-
someone needs to want to do this first before we even should talk about it, I think, right?
Possibly, but I think we need to be prepared for that possibility. I mean, I do have a couple of ideas about how to manage that a little easier, but,
we can certainly plan on future work sessions to discuss the possibility.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Councilmember, when you're on a well and you have septic and these things fail and they stop producing water, it's really stressful on residents that are like that. And having that utility service could really be the difference between, you know, a multiple thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, $30,000 people spend to drill to find a new well. That could just be wasted if it doesn't hit. And it becomes, there's just a basic level of compassion there that, you know, common sense, if we got the line there. So.
Thank you for your input. Back to
The only other last concern was raised was about the impact to wildlife and ecosystems in the area. Does anybody want to speak to that? Because I don't think our Environmental Advisory Board spoke to that. Anyone want to speak to that? I think that was the last concern raised. I'm curious if anyone wants to add a comment about that.
Ma'am, I know that there was, prior to, just in coordination with staff as well as during our EAB review, we talked at length about the consideration specifically to the wildlife based off of the Jordan Lake watershed. And so there were some commitments made with respect to lighting, directional lighting, with respect to timing, so that we don't have light nuisance that could impact wildlife during evening hours. Maggie, I don't know, I mean, we felt like we appropriately addressed the considerations from the EAB and got unanimous approval from them accordingly.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add is we, if approved, I mean, we do have an environmental consultant on board, so they're doing threatened and endangered species walks, they're doing everything that the state requires. We'll be working with the Army Corps to make sure everything is regulated as well as with town staff. So I can't speak to exactly the ecosystem around, but we do have an environmental consultant on board, and that's something that Beacon and Koch are cognizant of and, you know, want to do a great development here that does not have negative impacts around us. So it's something that will be considered for sure.
Thank you. I just want to say there's been a lot of work involved. I want to just commend Manager Crosby and staff for all the work that's been done. I remember the first phone call we had, and there's been a lot of collaboration and working with neighbors to try to make this come to fruition. I will say, kind of echo what Mr. Hastings said. I mean, this is a grand opportunity, a golden moment for Apex with regard to what we want to see as far as economic development. So I would really like to see this move forward, and so he can make an announcement.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the land use amendment, the annexation, and the rezoning for this.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I want to add my comments, Mayor, before we vote here. And I just want to thank Beacon. I know not only you put a lot of work into this project, and I appreciate all that, and I appreciate the investments you guys have made in Apex in the past, and all the work you're doing here for economic development. It's great for the town. And Coca-Cola, I couldn't be happier about the corporate potential corporate anchor coming in here and your zero waste policies. I think you're a great steward for this area, and for the Jordan Lake watershed in particular. This area is a very sensitive area, and I am very concerned about it, and I do think we need to be very intentional and careful if we do move forward with a broader planning exercise with Chatham County, and take a hard look at the type of uses that we're having in here. But for the moment, you know, Coca-Cola is one of the companies I trust you the right thing. You have a good reputation with this kind of stuff. So I really think this just comes down to the one issue about the road. I don't want to downplay that. You know, I know there's some disagreement with staff, and we've all worked really hard on this, and it sounds like we didn't quite come together totally in agreement about where we want to be. That happens sometimes, but for where we're at tonight, we have what I think is a fair offer on the table of $1 million fee in lieu and right-of-way dedication for the property, and I think we should take that deal.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I also want to just point out that doing a little bit of digging and due diligence on Durham Coke, I feel very confident with them as an environmental partner in this. And I mean, their history and record's been pretty solid and has been very demonstrable. So to me, I feel as though when we look at the longer term impacts, particularly on the environmental side, I feel very confident that, you know, from their standpoint, we've got a good steward in our hands. So I feel very comfortable about that.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments before we vote?
I mean, I think I'd chime in. I think there's going to be some traffic impacts and some wildlife impacts. I mean, inevitably, when you change things from natural area to employment center, there's going to be that. But you know, I look around this area, and there's a lot of like storage facilities that I don't think provide very much impact toward jobs, or then they have a lot of light and they're kind of just sitting there. So I think I'm excited about this possibility. I think when you're weighing the pros and cons, this one comes out pretty well in the pros, despite the, admittedly, some of the negative impacts that might occur in the area. But I'm excited.
Good, all right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, motion passed unanimously. Congratulations.
There's only one more, though, right?
One more.
You wanna go for it? You wanna go for it?
I can charge.
Okay, you good?
Let's do it. Let's keep
All right,
going.
so you want for it, okay. All right. Okay, you say so. You good, or you want one? Okay, all right, cool. Sorry, Ms. Cox.
JK to Shane.
All right, we're gonna take a recess, be back at 8:10. 8:10, all right.
8:10. I think it's bet.
Yes.
That's
So the proposed amendment to the Thoroughfare and Collector Street Plan map is for North Salem Street, beginning at Davis Drive, just north of US 64, all the way to Laura Duncan Road, also north of US 64. This corridor is currently shown as an existing 2-lane thoroughfare on our transportation plan. The proposed amendment would upgrade that to a 3-lane thoroughfare, so show future widening. This amendment was requested by our traffic engineering staff, mainly due to traffic capacity and operations. So in 2020, NCDOT measured 8,600 vehicles per day on average. We now have 2050 projections, and that volume is expected to double. So, an additional lane will assist with the travel needs in this corridor. Our 3-lane thoroughfare, this is just our typical 3-lane thoroughfare, requires 80 feet of right-of-way. We do have opportunities to narrow that in constrained areas. This exhibit depicts where we actually already have at least 80 feet. So where you see the dark and light green, we have at least 80 feet of right-of-way already. Where you see the yellow to orange, we have closer to 70 feet. And then where you see the red, we would need to acquire additional right-of-way for the widening. I'll also point out that under the CSX Railroad Bridge, those bridge abutments are really close to the edge of the roadway now, so that would continue to be a pinch point until that bridge is replaced, which is not programmed. Planning staff do support this proposed amendment, so did our fire department staff and police. The planning board also unanimously recommended approval at their March 14th meeting, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Questions?
Ms. Cox, when I was looking at the map, I did notice that there's a red area near some homes in that new Derby Lane area. That seems like will be unlikely to redevelop. So is that going to be, I mean, how much of a problem is that going to cause in doing this?
So in that area, and we don't have the roadway design yet, I think that's one of the most constrained sections of the corridor, and I do think that's where we're going to need to narrow from that 80 feet, probably tighten up that 13.5-foot, sorry, the mouse disappears, 13.5-foot strip between sidewalk and back of curb to try to constrain that and minimize the impacts there. But if you really zoom in, I would not expect any kind of substantial property impacts there.
Okay.
Other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll open up public hearing for comments. No sign-ups tonight, so we're good. We'll close public hearing. It's back to council for discussion. Lead to a possible motion.
Motion approved.
Motion approved, Gant. Second, Stallings. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, we move now to updates by Manager Crosby.
Good evening, council members. I just have a few updates. The first is just recognizing that we celebrated Arbor Day on Friday by planting 7 trees in honor of every year we've been a tree city. And we planted a low-lying area of Hunter Street Park with species that need plenty of water: bald cypress, tupelo, and river birch. Secondly, we are installing bees, so we're bringing bees. We're excited about that. I'm excited about it if nobody else is. But so the electric department is going to be installing beehives along some of our town property, the electric easements. 4 of our employees are certified beekeepers. We have 1 person that is seeking his certification, and we're looking forward to collecting honey and possibly bottling up peak honey, Apex honey, but honey. And then you'll be getting more information about Earth Fest that's coming up on April 23rd from 12 to 4 p.m. And it's one of the first events that will be held on town campus. So we're really excited about that. I also want to just, again, congratulate the Water Department on the Outstanding Local Program for 2021. We're always excited when our staff are recognized for their hard work. And so I'll send congratulations again. And then lastly, I just want to respond to Mr. Hastings' question about an update on Tunstall House. We have received estimates on Tunstall House for both the exterior and the interior. We are in the process of getting an RFQ for exterior construction bidding documents, and then we'll restore the exterior and repair any and that will restore the exterior and repair any structural issues. And then from there, we'll move forward with looking at what we'll do with the interior. So that's an update on Tunstall House, and we'll make sure that Mr. Hastings gets this update as well.
And
Any
can you confirm
questions?
that planning for Tunstall House was based on the budget last year, that we kind of got the ball rolling with that? So
Right.
it's a problem that we are aware of, I guess, and then the next step will be to actually do the work, right?
Right, so we'll be requesting a budget amendment soon for the exterior work. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions for me? All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. We are done. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. 8:15.